What is going on, everyone? It is College Football Talk, and I'm your host, Hunter DeLauder. Today is Week 9 recaps, and we're going to be taking a look at all the biggest action from this past weekend and giving my thoughts on all the biggest games, including Texas A&M rallying late, Ohio State surviving Nebraska, Texas escapes, Alabama rolls, Ole Miss does what now, and Penn State looks dominant. So all that plus a lot more, and we're going to take a look at how we did in best bets for the weekend. It wasn't our best week, but we still made some money nonetheless. So make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. It's free, takes no charge or effort at all. Just hit that subscribe button below, and we can continue on our goal to 200 subscribers. The only way we do that is to get you guys subscribed. So if you're new around here, subscribe. If you're not and you're recurring, make sure you guys are liking the videos and then sharing as well to get more people hooked and join along on the College Football Talk train, joyride, however you want to call it. So, but nonetheless, though, we're going to get right into it. So we're going to kill the music, and we'll start in College Station, where Texas A&M, number 14, Texas A&M, took down a number 8 LSU, rallied late in the second half to get the job done, 38-23. And one of the better environments you'll see all season, which was Kyle Field. Sorry, I took a spray. Now I'm on the verge of releasing burping that cannot be seen on camera. Yeah, I mean, we're on a late night here on the Monday night here on the East Coast. Stayed up watching my Steelers win. Shout out Pittsburgh and all Steeler Nation right there, taking down the Giants tonight. But nonetheless, we were back here. That was your NFL talk for the week. Now we're back. All right, so tale of two halves it was for LSU. First half for LSU was dominant. A big Aaron Anderson touchdown was 76 yards, and a really nice play, too. He somehow kept his knee from hitting the ground. Took off. They were up 17-7 at half. Everything was rolling. I mean, 283 total yards of offense. They rushed. They were 7.6 yards per play. Defense was looking good. They had 2 sacks. And, I mean, it was as if LSU's has finally arrived. They're taking that next step, and they're going to run away with this possibly. And then the second half came. I mean, second half, 157 total yards. They had 0 yards rushing. They had 24 in the first half, so let's do the math now. They finished the game with 24 yards rushing on the night. They threw for ball for 405 yards. They turned the ball over 3 times. And they allowed 2 sacks. The big challenge that was, the big unsolved puzzle that was that O-line and pass protection. And Texas A&M got after it late in the fourth quarter, made things uncomfortable. The adjustments made by Mike Elko and that staff were unreal. Just how well they responded, being down, but not out of it. And it's defensively, it was just continuing getting pressure. They didn't do as good of a job at getting pressure and creating havoc in the first half, obviously. To do it in the second half, just to get pressure, can change up the looks, make things uncomfortable, and confuse Nussmeier. I mean, they did all of it. I mean, Nussmeier looked lost. It looked like he was seeing ghosts out in the playing field. I mean, he had 2 really bad questionable picks. There was one he tried to throw it back across his body that that never works out. And then there was one. It was a great play by York, who just kind of hot hid and then just jumped right in front of the running back to get it. Nussmeier never saw him, and that kind of put a end to any plans LSU had at coming back. But I mean, and then offensively, A&M first half wise, they really struggled to do anything. Connor Wegman was 5 of 14 for 49 yards. They only had what did they have? They only had 49 passing yards. They had 98 rushing yards, so they were running the ball well, but the passing side was not doing anything, and they just needed a spark. Wegman went back out for the third quarter. Again, wasn't playing well, so Elko made the move. They make the change midway through the third. Wegman finished 6 of 18 for 64 yards. They go back to Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed came in for Wegman He started the Florida game after Wegman was a game time decision in that one. He starts that game, looks phenomenal. Then he starts the Bowling Green game and starts the Arkansas game. So he wins all three. Wegman starts the Missouri game, looks like a world beater. And now we're kind of fast forward here. And LSU had no answers defensively. They could not. It was if they were just hit by a freight train. They could not figure out what to do at all, how to stop Marcel Reed's legs. His legs were phenomenal in a sense that they took over. They had no answers. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't stop him. I mean, Marcel Reed only made 2 passes when he came in. He connected on a nice deep shot, and that was really it. 2 for 2 for 70 yards. But he had 3 touchdowns rushing. He had 9 carries, 62 yards. I mean, it was a complete shock to the system if you're LSU. And listen, I mean, all credit to A&M in that department for just out coaching LSU, and that in the entire second half of the game, they completely dominated the coaching side. And then they were able to run the ball really well too. Talked about that in the preview, how they needed to run the ball. I said Le'Veon Moss is going to need to approach 100 yards, if not cross over. Well, he finished 14 carries, 83 yards, had 2 touchdowns, averaged almost 6 yards a carry. They rushed for 245 yards on the night. So, I mean, they were running the ball really, really well. I mean, LSU couldn't. A&M was. And even Le'Veon Moss wasn't even the leading carrier. Amari Daniels was too. And he's the second back. And he had 12 carries for 91 yards. He averaged almost 8 yards a carry. So they were running the ball really well. They really didn't do a whole lot in the passing game. But again, like when you're running the ball so well with Reed's legs and then you have Moss and Daniels in the backfield, there's no need to. And then we'll shift back here to LSU real quick as we wrap up on this game. But LSU's miscues killed them in this game. We can put all the pressure and all the blame on Nussmeier. And he didn't have his best game, but they're becoming too reliant on him. It's the Jalen Milroe effect here. They are putting all of the pressure now on Garrett Nussmeier to bail them out. There's no balance at all when it comes to running the football, or just taking any sort of pressure off of his shoulders. They're saying, listen, we got to have you do it. Can you do it? Because, again, we aren't doing it as a group. We're going to put it all on you. And then, again, when you throw that into 2 missed field goals, a botched field goal snap, 3 turnovers, a lack of running game, and they allowed sacks, I mean, that'll do it right there for you. The field goals were huge. And they weren't even, like, near misses. They were bad misses, too, by Ramos. And then they had like the botched snap. It was a complete meltdown special teams wise. And I said going into this game, one of the reasons why I liked A&M was the crowd. I've seen this now. This is probably like the 3rd game now I've seen where the home team has gone into the game as the underdog. And I had just liked the spot. You know, they may have beat them 7 times. They may lose 7 times out of 10. But in this spot, I really like them. At home, at night, you have that kind of fan base behind your back like that. I mean, that's a big-time spot. We saw it with Oregon against Ohio State. Saw it with Tennessee against Alabama. And I just thought, LSU's been rolling. But, man, there's something about playing at night, a College Station, big-time game, when your A&M's really good, like they are right now. They were going to be the 12th man was going to show up. And LSU had 5 pre-snap penalties. They played a huge factor in the game. I'm going to show a clip here of Power. This is their walkout when they come out on the field. I mean, you want to talk about one of the better entrances of all of college football. Here's this one here. We're going to hit this.
you don't think that had an impact, then you're crazy. I mean, that is one of the best environments you'll see in all of college football all year long. And they for sure had an impact on that game. 100%. 150% they did. And credit to A&M. They stepped up. They rallied, never out of it. Listen, the quarterback change was much needed. This is Marcel Reed's team going forward. Let's not be mistaken. Wegman is who he thought he is. That Missouri game was probably a flash in the pan, and it helped also when Le'Veon Moss ran for how well he did in that game. But I mean, this is Marcel Reed's team. The offense, I said it after the Florida game. The Marcel Reed offense runs so much better. It runs so much smoother. It runs so much more to how Colin Klein, the offensive coordinator, wants to run. He wants to do more RPO, more quarterback designs, and just keep the defenses on their toes. And it runs better through him. I'm not saying that, Wegman can't do any of that, but they lack that spark, that it factor that Marcel Reed brings. And it's clear as day. When you see Marcel Reed just come in halfway to the third and you completely take over a game like that, I think the signs are pretty clear. So, and then as for LSU, listen, your season's not over yet. You still have a lot to play for. Playoffs are still in the picture. Like, just because you have 2 losses does not mean you're eliminated by anything. Hell, they could still make the SEC title game. They are currently 3rd right now in the SEC. If LSU and A&M win out, they will meet again in the SEC title game. Georgia, who's kind of sitting there in that 2nd spot, needs Bama or Texas to beat A&M or LSU at some point. Or they need LSU or A&M to lose at some point to kind of slide back into that spot. We still have a lot of football to go, but that's just where we are right now. So, these 2 teams may meet again for all we know. And LSU's next remaining schedule, they have the bye coming up, and then they go back at home at night, Death Valley, hosting Alabama. That's the big one. You have to win that one to keep your season alive. That is a playoff elimination game for all intents and purposes. Then you have to go to Florida, and then you're at Vanderbilt and OU. So it's the next 3 games are really going to make or break LSU's season. The OU game I'm not really worried about because they'll bum rush OU, and that'll be all. I mean, A&M though, remaining schedule, it's a lot more smooth sailing. They do need to have a massive test on the road this weekend. We are not going to try to avoid it. We will be talking about it in the preview on Wednesday. At South Carolina, massive, massive game. They cannot go in there. They are going into a hornet's nest for sure. If you go in there thinking you're just going to win, you will be walking out of that game with a loss, and it'll be the classic A&M letdown. But then if you get through that, then it's New Mexico State. Then you're at Auburn. So again, it's not the toughest place, or it's not the easiest place to play, but it's certainly doable. But then you get the big one at home with Texas. So it's certainly more manageable, but you still got to go out there and take care of business. But really nice win by A&M. And if you're LSU, listen, just got to find a way to stop putting all the pressure on Nussmeier. Nussmeier cannot be Superman from the first play of the game to the last. He can't. You cannot do that. It's just not sustainable. Cannot do that. Even Brian Kelly talked about in his postgame. They got to help him out, they said. And you've got to find ways to do it. Whether you can't have 24 yards rushing the whole game. There's only a team that did it worse, and that was Syracuse this week. You cannot rush the ball for only 24 yards. You can't have 0 rushing yards in the second half. We can't. Caden Durham's got to have a better game than that. Have to. And so that's where it starts. Every time your quarterback is under duress, you need to find a way to run the football more. It's just plain and simple. That offensive line is good enough to run the football. And they got to start showing it. All right. Enough of that. We're moving on to the number 5 Texas Longhorns escape Nashville and pull out with a 27-24 win against then-ranked number 25 Vanderbilt. Texas looked really good to start this game. They did throw, outside of the first drive where they threw a pick, but I mean, 3 first-half touchdowns, a lot different from what happened last week, and they forced 2 turnovers also in that first half, so it was looking really good for Texas. But they just could never put in the knockout shot. They just let Vanderbilt hang around this entire game, and Vanderbilt, credit to them on defensively, they were able to stand up, play really good defense, and give at least their offense a chance. And back to Texas, though, I mean, the second half offense stalled. It just like the engine just shut off. They had 6 points, 1 interception, and 2 punts. They needed a late turnover on a 4th down that was like a heave and a prayer by Diego Pavia, who just launched one up in the air, and it got picked off to get a field goal to just to get separation. I mean, Texas' last 4 drives, here we go, before they kneeled down, after they recovered an onside kick, they had to recover an onside kick, even being up 10 with like 2 minutes to go. Last 4 drives, 3 plays, 11 yards, interception. 8 plays, 13 yards, punt. I don't even know how that even happens. These 2 drives here, 7 plays, 16 yards, punt. I don't know how you muster up that many plays and don't get more yards than that. And then the 7-play, 24 yards field goal. And that field goal was off the turnover. So, I mean, who's to say they were really going to do anything anyway with it? It's very weird why they just all of a sudden aren't performing to how we thought they were. It's becoming one of the more underwhelming and more disappointing groups in college football when it comes to offensive football. Before their SEC games and pass attempts, they were in yards per pass attempt. They were 18th in the country. Really efficient, really good. Last 4 games, they're 121st. And that falls on Quinn Ewers. That falls on the offensive line, not being able to protect very well. It falls on everyone. The receivers aren't getting separation downfield like they were. There's just no explosiveness in this offense. All of a sudden, it's kind of just starting to shut down a little bit, or stalling out at least. And the offensive line struggled, however you want to call it again. I said Vanderbilt to win this game because they were coming in as an 18-point dog. We're like, what do you need to do? Well, number one, they needed to do what Georgia did, and you have to get pressure. I mean, you're going to find a way. You got to have at least 2 to 3 sacks at the minimum, if not more. Well, Vandy did that. 4 sacks. They had 9 tackles for loss. Again, this O-line struggled. And it was the similar people that struggled last week with Georgia. Again, it was Banks. It was, and the rest of that company that is just struggling now all of a sudden. And these aren't top-tier pass rushers either. I mean, all respect to Vanderbilt, but like, this isn't Georgia. This isn't Alabama. This isn't LSU. Like, it's Vanderbilt. You're giving up 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss from Vanderbilt. It can't happen. And now you kind of have to figure out now what to do going forward via the bye this week. But then you have Florida coming in. Florida's been playing better defensively on the D-line. They're going to be able to get pressure. You have Kentucky, who has a veteran D-line. As bad as they are offensively, they still have a veteran D-line that can get after you. You have A&M with all those guys. They got to figure something out because this is a spiral. This could become a snowball effect where they can't figure out what to do pass protection-wise, and it just keeps getting bigger. The snowball is starting to come down the mountain. It picked up some speed after the Georgia game, and it got big. And it's getting a little big. And now all of a sudden it hit another bump, but it's picking up more speed now and more snow and getting bigger because this Vanderbilt 4 sacks we're giving up now. And now we start to play more veteran D-lines, more effective D-lines that can get pressure and get after you. They may not be the most, top tier units, but if we're giving up 4 sacks to Vanderbilt, we've given up 11 sacks the last 2 games. It's just getting bigger and bigger, and this could become a real issue because, again, Quinn Ewers, he's been dealing with that abdomen strain. He's not the most effective quarterback on the run. He's a pocket passer that needs to set his feet and fire. If you're not giving him time, then there's no explosive down the field. We can't get our playmakers involved. It just becomes a spiraling effect here. They better figure it out. And
one last thought here before we move on. Vanderbilt, like we've already talked about the defense. Offense just wasn't good enough second half wise. Too many punts, just too much, just stalled out. Kind of how Texas did. This was a very sloppy second half, if we're going to be honest. Really slow paced. Both teams stalled out offensively, and it stinks because Vanderbilt's defense played a hell of a game, keeping them in that game like that. And then this offense just couldn't get anything going until it was too late. And then they struggled on third and fourth down, combined 4-14. Just you're gonna have to be more efficient than that if you're gonna want to beat Texas. And all credit to Texas defense. Texas defense is playing rock solid. This is not a defensive problem for Texas. This is an offensive issue right now that needs to be solved. Otherwise, these national title hopes, everything you had planned out to start the year, could quickly start to snowball out of control and out the window if you don't get it fixed. So, all right, moving on. I'm going to move the iPad here out of the way because we had to finish all of our podcast stuff outside another game. On paper, we have good old-fashioned paper. So, all right, we're going to get rolling here. Take another sip. Right. It is past midnight. Here is technically Tuesday, October 26th, or 29th, excuse me. And we're talking football. Wouldn't want to have it any other way. So make sure you guys are subscribing. Because if I'm doing the sacrifice, you guys can at least subscribe. That's no shot. I'm just saying. All right. Number 15, Alabama rolls, no pun intended, against number 21, Missouri. I have some stuff to talk about Missouri, but we'll get to that in a second. 34-0. I didn't have high hopes for Missouri going into the game, especially after Brady Cook has been injured, got banged up. He actually went to the hospital against Auburn, came back and finished the game somehow. He was coming into this game doubtful. He started the game. It was nothing. He didn't play well at all. Ended up getting re-injured. Drew Pine came in and didn't do anything. They were down Noel in the backfield. So it was already going to be a tall task. But we still said, listen, as big of a task, let's just get our playmakers involved. We have really good guys on the outside. Theo Weiss, Luther Burden, who has been non-existent all season. Let's get him involved. Give us a chance somehow. Well, they didn't. They didn't ever have a chance. Alabama got back to Alabama football. They got physical and became overwhelming for Missouri. They ran the ball. How many times have I been stressing that all podcast long the last few weeks? They had 271 yards rushing. It was still by committee for the most part. I still would like to see them run the football more. But listen, you can't complain. Justice Haynes had 8 carries for 79 yards. Richard Young had 3 carries for 63 yards. Jam Miller had a couple touchdowns. He had 11 carries. He led the group there. And it wasn't all – they didn't put it all in Jalen Milroe. Garrett Nussmeier took that virus or whatever's been going around. He took that in this week. Jalen Milroe somehow recovered, got it off of him, and sent it over there because he didn't have to be Superman this week. They didn't need him to be. And that's a good thing for Alabama because Jalen Milroe only threw the ball 26 times for 215 yards, which is fine. Because, again, when you can run the ball effectively, you don't have to put everything on your quarterback to make every single play for you. And he only ran the ball for 50 yards, and he had a touchdown still. It was the defense that stole the show, though, because they held Missouri to 239 yards of total offense. Excuse me. They gave up 72 passing yards and just 106. They did give up 167 rushing yards, but that doesn't help you out when you're trailing by multiple scores and you need to score quickly. And the important part is that 72 yards through the air. And now, granted, the quarterback play was atrocious for Missouri all game long, but you still held it down and didn't give them any life. You were able to force turnovers, had 3, and you kept Missouri off the field, shortened drives. 3 of 13 Missouri was on third down. They still had way too many penalties. Alabama did 7 penalties for 85 yards. Again, they're one of the worst penalized groups in the country. Continued there on Saturday. So somehow it's got to get cleaned up. And now you're heading to a hornet's nest. You know about hornet's nest. This is a hornet's nest on steroids they're about to head into on an elimination game Saturday night in Death Valley next week. They better. It's almost expected at this point. Even LSU's two terribly penalized teams are about to face off, and I'm telling you, it is going to be a massive factor in that game. All right, shift into Missouri real quick. Listen, we didn't have high hopes, like we said. But, got to be better. I just think the biggest stat here, here's your paper pop stat for the way. Shout out Josh Pate on this one. Luther Burden, the third. He had 3 catches for 3 yards. Don't know how that's quite possible. It's even more mind-boggling is he had 2 carries for 15 yards. So he had more yards running the football than he did catching. And his sole purpose to being on a field is to catch the football. We said he needed to have a massive game in this game. 3 catches for 3 yards isn't going to do that. I don't know what the heck they were trying to do, but it wasn't get the feet in the football. And they're just so depleted now injury-wise. It's key positions that it's going to be tough for them to even bounce back, I think, going forward. I haven't looked up their remaining schedule on the year here. Let's see. They have – all right, let's see. So you have Oklahoma. They're on a bye this week. So then you have Oklahoma, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and then you get Arkansas at home. So it's not a bad schedule to finish out the year, but it's certainly – there are still some hiccups there. And if you don't have a quarterback, well, then you're really in big trouble. Because Drew Pine did not show me anything that said I'm going to have confidence in him. And speaking of confidence and just expectations, Missouri is still ranked in the top 25. Here's my rant time because this is much needed. Shout out Sprite here. Okay, let's get Sprite as a brand. Missouri is in the top 25. It's a travesty. It's a war crime. Drugs, however you want to call it. It's disgusting. They are terribly overrated. They're a 6-2 team. That is terrible. They have played 2 teams that have both been ranked on the road this year. Both SEC teams, A&M and Alabama. They have been outscored 75-10 in those games. 75-10 in those games. I'm going to read that one more time. 75-10, and they are still ranked in the top 25. They just got beat 34-0 on the road against a ranked opponent and only dropped 4 spots. Vanderbilt lost by 3 at home by 3. I think I already said that. To a top 5 team and fell out of the top 25. Missouri just got their asses kicked on the road again, 75-10. They've been outscored. And they're still in the top 25. Make it make sense. I don't. Thank God this is the last week before the college football playoff rankings start next week. And they will not be sniffing the top 25. Thank you, Jesus, because I can't take this. This is drugs at its finest. Somebody, as Stephen A. Smith says, stay off the weed. Like, we have to get them off whatever they're smoking because we can't have that. It's just, it can't happen. There's plenty of better teams. Vanderbilt is a top 25 team. Put them back in there. Respectfully, I would have rather seen them stay there and watch Missouri say bye-bye. Can't happen. All right, there's my rant. All right, moving on. All right, to one of the more intriguing games. Actually, not really. It was just more of the more fascinating fun facts of the day. Number 18, Ole Miss overwhelms Oklahoma 26-14. This is one of the more just surprising games, I feel like. At least at the start of the game it was. Oklahoma looked good in the first half. I mean, they were running the ball well. Jackson Arnold was playing well. The offensive line looked somewhat reasonable. They had the lead going into halftime of 14-10 on a last-minute touchdown, which for some that had Oklahoma Miss minus 20.5 really hurt down the stretch. Sorry. But listen, Jackson Arnold, 2 touchdown passes. He played all right for the most part, actually, the whole game. 22-31, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did lose a fumble. But the offense is so bad. It's so bad. They're so riddled with injuries. You talk about injuries. They're still down their top 5 receivers. Javonte Barnes is their leading rusher, their main running back, RB1.
He led the team in receiving yesterday or on Saturday. He had 5 catches, 57 yards. Bauer Sharp was right behind it with 53 yards and a touchdown. Barnes also ran the ball for 16 carries, 67 yards. But here's the stat. Here's your paper pop for you. Offensive line, terrible again. Just terrible. They're ranked 131st, I want to say now, in sacks allowed. Could be worse. They should be dead last. I would not be surprised if they are. They gave up. I was looking up the stuff here, getting ready for this, the show. And, I'm looking through, trying to find some stuff here to talk about. And this stat pops up, and I had to wipe my eyes off because I thought I was missing something. They gave up 10 sacks Saturday to Ole Miss. Ole Miss had 10 sacks. Ole Miss got 15 tackles for loss. What? Oklahoma's offensive line gave up 10 sacks. A lot of just repeating because that's how travesty and just shocking some of these numbers are. I have not seen a 10-sack game in a SEC, let alone college football game, in some time now. I've seen 7-sack games. I've seen 8-sack games. 10 sacks. SEC team, 10 sacks. Ole Miss. Centurion Perkins had 11 tackles, 4 sacks himself. J.J. McGee had 2 sacks. Princely Uman-Mielen had 2 sacks himself as well. 10 sacks. And they forced 2 turnovers, which was big time. And Ole Miss's offense was efficient, 311 passing yards. Jackson Dart played really well, actually. 22 of 30, 311 yards. He averaged 10.4 yards to throw. Just really good. And Caden Prieskorn had himself a nice day. 5 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown. They need to run the ball better, though. 64 yards on the ground's not going to cut it by any stretch of the means. I mean, you're going up against a solid D-line in Oklahoma, but we've got to be better. That offensive line is, you talk about issues, has given them issues all year. And, they played better pass pro yesterday or on Saturday. I keep saying yesterday, but they played better on pass pro, but I mean, you got to be better running the football. 10 sacks. 10 sacks. Ole Miss, listen, who do they have this week? They're not on a bye. They just came back from a bye. See, this is just lack of knowing. We're going to get better. Arkansas, that's right. Listen, should go to Arkansas this week. We'll see how they do there. Need to be ready for Taylor Green in that high tempo, high velocity, high scoring offense. Talk about Arkansas shouting out. We'll shout them out later today after what they did on offense Saturday. And then you had the big one, Georgia, 3:30 game, ABC game. Just game time got announced today, and Lane Kiffin was not happy about that. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But listen, it's still ahead of them. They can still run the table here, make the playoff. The SEC's out of the question, but you can still make the playoff. But listen, you got to take care of business now. They have to win out. There's no and if or buts about it. You got to show up. Got to take care of business here. And but listen, a nice win on the road or at home after losing to LSU, and 10 sacks. 10 sacks. All right, moving on. I kind of like just throwing papers here. It's kind of satisfying. Just throwing it all away. Anyway, we're going to head now to Big Ten country. Next piece of paper here. This is so much fun. Number 3 Penn State beat Wisconsin 28-13. A very sloppy game for 3.5 quarters. A lot of these games this weekend were sloppy and just kind of boring. It was a really boring Saturday. I don't like using that word. Man, there was just nothing. It came close a few times, but I mean, Wisconsin could have done us a massive favor, but they didn't. Anyway, Wisconsin had 3 punts and 10 points in the first half. Penn State had 3 punts, 1 turnover on downs, and 7 points. And Drew Aller got banged up in the first half. He didn't return in the game. It was a knee injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But Wisconsin had the lead going into half. And then they got outscored 21-3. And Braden Locke threw an inexplicable pick 6. Backed up in their own area, backed up in their own
end zone. I don't know what he was trying to do with that. He threw it right to the guy. Can't be doing that. But listen, credit to Penn State going down in half, making the right adjustments, and Bo Pribilla played really well coming out, filling in for Aller. 11 of 13, 98 yards, touchdown pass. He used his legs when he needed to, and they ran the ball really well. Katron Allen took over at 11 carries, 86 yards, averaged about 8 yards a carry and a touchdown. It was just an all-out team effort in that second half for Penn State. Really nice to see. Seeing that your star quarterback goes down, you know you're going to have to rally and help out the backup because, honestly, Penn State wasn't doing much either on the offense. You take away that pick six, and they really weren't doing a whole lot until late in that game when Wisconsin was kind of running out of gas. But, I mean, just Wisconsin not being able to win the big game again at home. This is now the second game at home now they failed to win. They had a top 5 team walking in. It's just really weird that why Wisconsin isn't able to get over that kind of hump. We see this year in and year out recently where you have a big-time team coming in. Ohio State last year on Saturday night, and they just can't do anything. They can't get that win. And so Luke Fickell and his company will just keep searching. The quarterback play's got to get better for Wisconsin if they want to have any success going forward, and not just this year, but any year after. So, and Penn State injuries are something to monitor for sure. Drew Aller talked about, but defensive end Donnie Dennis Sutton, who is on the other side, where Abdul Carter's on one side, you have Sutton on the other. He left the game early as well, late in the second half, or in that second half. So you have Ohio State coming into town this week. Get over this little road hump right here with Wisconsin. Now you have the big game. But, I mean, how confident are we if Pribilla has to go in and play the game against that defense for Ohio State, which is littered with just NFL talent across the board? How confident are we in that? So it's something to monitor for sure. You know that they're going to want to play, but how healthy are they going to be to play? And if they do play, will they be a liability or not? It's something to really monitor throughout the week. And for sure, we'll be keeping an eye on it and see if I can give you anything I've heard or seen by the time we get to the preview episode. But nonetheless, though, it's a really nice win for Penn State. Nothing really much else to talk about. I mean, just this game was kind of boring, not going to lie. But I thought I had Wisconsin plus 6.5, and that pick six kind of put a damper to those plans. Penn State, nice job winning on the road, and now you have the big one. Focus here. Here we go. And we have our last game here as we bring the iPad back in here. We have Ohio State holding off Nebraska. Boy, this is a game that we had not circled on the bingo sheet as a headliner game we'd be talking about. Remember, this was around the country type game. Mainly because Ohio State came into this game as a 25.5-point favorite. They were supposed to take care of business coming off the bye after the Oregon loss. I mean, Nebraska just got smoked, no pun intended, by Kurt Cignetti in Indiana. They lost 56-7. Now they're going into Ohio State. There was no chance they were going to win. Ohio State was going to bounce back, get ready for Penn State. Instead, they looked lethargic and disinterested. Couldn't run the ball at all. They got season low in rushing, season low in passing. They ran the ball for 64 yards on the day. When you have a running back tandem like Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, there is no reason to ever be rushing for 64 yards. No reason at all. We saw some very high talented teams this weekend that should have success running the football, and they had no success at all. Why? I couldn't tell you. But, they each had 10 carries, 29 yards for Judkins, 25 for Henderson. They were 1 of 10 on third down. They couldn't keep drives going. Will Howard was efficient enough. He was 13 of 16, 221 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, they trailed in the fourth quarter as 25.5-point favorites. It was, they responded nicely and scored. They retake the lead, but, Nebraska was up on them. And then they got the ball back a few more times, 2 more times after. Nebraska, again, they play
They played well. They ran the ball really well. They had 121 yards of rushing. Dante Dowdell was really good. And the defense played rock solid the whole game. They gave Nebraska a shot to win this game. But Dylan Raiola has struggled so far in these bigger games, and he struggled again. He has to play better. 152 yards, an interception. It was just 21 of 32. That's not good enough. You have to be at your best if you want to beat the best. And we see this time in and time out. The pressure just gets to these people, and they just don't have an answer. They don't have an answer on how to respond. And then that's that. And like I said, the defense played well enough to win this game, but it was an overall great response back after getting smoked last week, losing by 49 on the road. Now you had to go to Columbus to bounce back like that and take Ohio State to the brink. It was really good to see. Matt Rule definitely has a way of just getting his guys to flush, reset, and look forward to get them ready to roll. But hopefully see Raiola start to learn from these mistakes and just grow. I know he's young, he's a freshman, so you kind of have these hiccups, but man, when you're counted on to make big plays like that, you'd hope that he makes plays. Like even like the last drive he threw the pick, like there were some throws like we're forcing where you had guys underneath, but instead you're just trying to make the big play. Like the pick, he tried to force one that wasn't there, and he had two guys underneath. You're going to learn, hopefully, not to do that next time, but I mean, it's hard to say. But overall, good effort by Nebraska. And Ohio State, though, I don't know. I don't know what to think right now because you lose the game at Oregon, which in a game that you almost shouldn't have lost, and you did. Okay. You flush it, move to the bye, you get ready. You come into this one as almost 4 touchdown favorites, and you just don't look interested at all. There's no life at all on the sidelines. I don't even know if they're happy to be there. And then they do that. I don't know. I really don't know. They just seem to be off right now. The fan base is starting to, it almost feels like they're starting to turn on Ryan Day some. They're just kind of getting tired with him. And I don't know if it's just kind of now starting to boil over a little bit, but they need to kind of figure itself out a little bit because you have Penn State now looking ahead here. Penn State looks like they're their team rolling with the better mojo, better vibes. They get a big one on the road like that with a backup quarterback in, and then you have Ohio State coming off this just ugly performance like that. It doesn't leave much confidence or a good taste in your mouth. So they're going to have to definitely figure something out. But listen, that's why, but listen, the games are played on the grass, not on paper. So we can talk about this all we want, but until it's going to get figured out one way or another. All right, moving on. As we round out today's episode here, as we can ditch the iPad now. Actually, check that. We won't. Well, we can. I know that. All right, back. Papers back. It's time for Around the Country. We're getting in the plane, soaring in through the sky. And we're going to talk about all the other games that happened this week. We're going to start all the way back on Thursday. 7-0 now. Smoke Syracuse, 41-13. They had 3 pick sixes the first half. They forced 3 pick sixes. They had 5 turnovers on the night. They held Syracuse to 6 yards rushing. 6 yards rushing. They held Syracuse to. Syracuse had 327 yards of total offense. 6 yards rushing. Boise State on Friday got a massive win against UNLV on the road in what was one of the biggest crowds in UNLV history. But the Broncos spoiled it with a 29-24 victory. Ashton Jeanty had a nice game. It was a tough, hard-fought 128 yards on the ground. He did get a touchdown as well. Didn't average that many yards per carry, which on the 33 carries, But nonetheless, he was a big factor as to why they were able to get the win. USC bounced back nicely against Rutgers, 42-20 win at home. And then on Saturday here, Notre Dame smoked Navy 51-14. The midshipmen turned the ball over 6 times, and I believe Notre Dame scored touchdowns on every single draw. Every time they forced the turnover, they scored a touchdown right after. So turning turnovers into points was the name of the game on that day. Indiana wins again, 8-0 on the week or on the year, 31-17. It was the perfect day for Hoosiers all over the world. As College Game Day was there, and even without the backup quarterback, that energy, that environment that was in Bloomington was able to elevate everyone's play as they got a big win against Washington. I'm not looking ahead a little bit, but they have a game against Ohio State later this year. Now, I don't think many people had that on the bingo card. Virginia Tech beat Georgia Tech 21-6. The Hokies, don't look now, have won 3 in a row. Since starting 2-3, they're slowly just moving along here. And if they can get past Syracuse now and get to 6-3 before that big Friday night game next week against Clemson, look out. Arkansas beat Mississippi State 58-25. The Razorbacks had 673 yards total offense. They rushed for 359 yards. Braylon Russell had 16 carries for 175 yards, and they threw the ball for 314 yards. Taylon Green had 5 touchdowns. That's pretty good. That's a nice little tune-up spot, I guess, putting points up on the board right before you host Ole Miss. And Oregon splattered Illinois. We talked about that game, how we were worried that Illinois was just not going to have enough playmakers to even keep up, and that really was the case. Oregon just overwhelmed Illinois right from the jump, and get in the Illini had no shot. BYU beat UCF 37-24. The Cougars remain undefeated. And they got UCF to fire their defense coordinator. Ted Roof is gone. And so UCF will be playing without a defense coordinator for the rest of the year. UTSA, this is my other rant for the night. Most people don't care about this game unless you betted on it. Oh, wait, I did. This was not a best bet on the podcast-wise. This was a personal bet. UTSA was up 42-17 with 5.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. They lost 46-45 in regulation. I don't even know how that's possible, but they did. They lost in regulation after being up 42-17 with 5.5 to go in the third. It's almost impressive how bad that was, and it's just an utter ultimate gut punch if you were betting on them. So, nice job there, Roadrunners. You will need to win my trust back because that is unacceptable. Miami blows out FSU. Really, they pulled ahead late. It was 36-14. First win against the Noles in 3 years. So nice job there by Miami. Miami stays undefeated. Michigan beats Michigan State 24-17. There was a big fight as soon as the game ended. There were some players involved. I'm not sure the full details, so I'm not really going to speak about it. But there could be some investigations going forward, I believe. It's what I heard, right? SMU survived Duke in overtime. This was another nice bet that I lost in overtime. 28-27. Duke failed to convert on a 2-point conversion, trying to win it. So the SMU Mustangs, who to 7-1, they play Pitt this week. They host Pitt. By the way, this game's at 8 o'clock on the ACC network. I don't think a lot of people are happy about that. But nonetheless, we move on. Kansas State survives Kansas. This was one of the podcast best bets. I thought Kansas State was going to dominate. They should have, but they didn't. They were at home too, playing a really bad Kansas team. But, you should have factored in the rivalry aspect. But 29-27, the Wildcats survive. They stay in the contention in that wild Big 12 race. And finally, Colorado beat Cincinnati 34-23. The Buffalo, who we did cash on, gets to bowl eligibility for the first time since 2016. So Deion Sanders has turned around this Buffalo group into a bowl team. So nice job there. They're winning games now that they should be winning, and now they're winning big games. So two things they didn't do last year, they're doing now this year, and now they continue to just keep on going, growing. They're running the ball better, and they're playing really good defense. So listen, this is a lot more. I don't know if they're going to make the Big 12 title game, but listen, there's a lot of optimism right now in Boulder. And now we'll just kind of have to sit back and watch and see how far this thing can go. All right. Well, that was it, though, for Around the Country. And we're going to round out today's episode. We'll talk about Best Bet Recap. 3-3 on the week, 26-13 on the season. We had a couple tough losses, but we did cash on the under for Ole Miss. We won the Colorado bet, and we had Boise State money. So we cashed out there. Ole Miss, minus 20.5 was a killer. That second half, the end of the second quarter touchdown they gave up was an absolute killer to that. And then Kansas State not showing up. Hate to see it. And then who was our last bet? Just now because I'm curious. I forget here. I shouldn't because I made the bet. Oh, Wisconsin. Yeah. So Wisconsin failed us. Kansas State failed us. And Ole Miss failed us partially. But they did redeem themselves by playing better defense. 10 sacks. And just like how, I'm not even going to do that. We're going to wrap the show up like that. So before I embarrass myself in some way, that's how the show's going to end today. So that is week 9 recap. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast and following on social media at DeLauder Hunter, at Hunter DeLauder 83. Like and subscribe. And if you're new around here, make sure you guys are subscribing. If you know anybody that is a college football fan, share the podcast out to them. Get them to subscribe so we can keep growing the channel. Get to 200 subscribers plus much more. And just batten down the hatches and get ready for Week 10 preview. We have a big time episode coming up. We have our first College Football Talk guest joining the show, Mr. Grady himself. Christian is his name, and he is a big Florida fan. So we're gonna bring him on. We're gonna give him the floor, and he's gonna explain to everyone why Florida has a fighting chance in this one. He's gonna give out his tips and tricks, strategy-wise, what they're gonna do to try to pull out a massive win in Jacksonville this weekend. Plus, he's gonna stick around and do the whole show with us. So can't wait to have him on. I know we're back in the usual recording area, but we will be back in the INC for that Wednesday. I'll be recording that. That'll be out either sometime Wednesday, late Wednesday, or Thursday. So make sure you guys are subscribing because you do not want to miss any of that. So we'll try hopefully get more guests coming forward. But this is going to be a great start. We're going to see how that goes, and can't wait for it. So make sure you guys subscribed. And this is Hunter, and I'll see you next time.